Cass Elliot was immediately arrested upon setting foot in England. In 1967, the Mamas and the Papas were invited to play Royal Albert Hall in England. On the boat ride over, they learned there were policemen waiting on shore with a warrant for Cass Elliot's arrest, and they got rid of their drugs as quickly as they could. Elliot was immediately arrested for stealing towels and not paying a hotel bill on a previous visit, but the real reason for the police involvement was more likely Elliot's on-again, off-again relationship with alleged drug smuggler Pick Dawson. The other band members waited outside with free Mama Cass signs, and after no evidence could be produced at her trial, the charges against Elliot were dropped. She also managed to find a hash cookie in her purse as she left court, so it apparently turned out to be a good day. Michelle Phillips was married to Dennis Hopper for 8 days. John Phillips was known for trying to control his wife Michelle, keeping her close by making her a member of his new journeyman trio, although she had no musical experience. She acted out by having affairs with other men, and after they divorced and the Mamas and the Papas disbanded, Michelle's relationships with famous men continued. She met Dennis Hopper as she was trying to start an acting career, and they got married. What happened afterwards isn't exactly clear, but probably thanks to Hopper's crazy mental condition, they filed for divorce 8 days later. Michelle later dated Jack Nicholson and then Warren Beatty, who ended up in conflict over her when they were filming The Fortune together. The band took their first acid trip together and were inspired by Hell's Angels. After one of John Phillips's first groups, the Journeymen, didn't find success, he formed the new Journeymen with his soon-to-be wife Michelle and another friend. That group was unsuccessful as well and broke up, later being reformed into another trio that included Michelle and Denny Doherty. Doherty's friend, Cass Elliot, had an extreme crush on him, and she followed him almost wherever he went. She started working as a waitress in the club where the band played just to be near him. The new Journeymen would let Elliot rehearse with them but refused to let her officially join. Despite how they treated her, the four of them shared their first experience with acid and realized they had musical chemistry. According to the story, the name of the band came from someone hearing a Hell's Angels member refer to the women in their group as mamas. Cass Elliot's starvation diets destroyed her health and likely led to her early death. Although Cass Elliot was overweight for most of her life, she outwardly seemed to accept it. Her outgoing personality and independence led the way for other female music stars who rose to fame in the 1960s. As much as she seemed to accept her weight, Elliot was internally unhappy with how she looked and frequently put herself on diets, many of them dangerous. She would basically starve herself, at one point going without food for 4 days every week during a 7-month time period. Elliot admitted she knew her dieting method wasn't the smartest, and although she lost more than 100 pounds, she ended up in the hospital. After suffering multiple health problems including hepatitis, tonsillitis, and hemorrhaged vocal cords, she never really regained her health. According to legend, Elliot died choking on a ham sandwich, but in actuality she passed away after suffering a heart attack at the very young age of 32. An uneaten sandwich happened to be sitting near her when she died, inspiring the story. John Phillips was arrested for drug trafficking. After the Mamas and the Papas broke up, he became depressed and his drug usage grew until it spiraled out of control. Keith Richards claimed he introduced John Phillips to heroin, saying, "I've never seen a guy become a junkie that quick." Phillips's arms were turning black since injecting so much cocaine and heroin into his veins was killing them. After spending around $1 million per year to keep his habit going, they were later joined by Phillips's daughter Mackenzie to help end her own drug habit, and also Denny Doherty for alcohol addiction. At the time, Phillips was also facing charges for drug trafficking after trading stolen prescriptions for drugs at a pharmacy for cocaine. Rehab cured Phillips of his drug addiction, but he instead became an alcoholic and died at age 65 from complications after a liver transplant. They had 11 children between them, several of whom also struggled with drug addiction. Between all 4 members of the Mamas and the Papas, 11 children were born. Several of John Phillips's children struggled with drug addiction throughout their lives, and the start of their habit was thanks to their father. "All of my children are in AA," he once said. Both children from Phillips's first marriage moved back in with him after his divorce from Michelle, and both kids developed addictions to drugs by the time they were 14. Daughter Mackenzie was involved even before that, being employed to roll joints for her father when she was 10, and claimed Phillips had introduced her into injecting cocaine, which basically messed her up for life. Luckily, some of the other children were spared the drug-filled life, such as Michelle and Phillips's daughter Chino, who was kept out of the spotlight until she helped form Wilson Phillips and rose to fame herself. Denny Doherty even moved from Los Angeles to Canada to keep both himself and his family away from drugs. Unfortunately, he acquired an addiction to alcohol instead and entered rehab in the 1980s, at the same time as Phillips. They partied with the Rolling Stones and shared drug and sex-filled experiences with them. Demonstrating the rich hippie lifestyle, John and Michelle Phillips bought a mansion in the extremely upscale area of Bel Air, complete with peacocks. Parties were a regular occurrence, and guests included movie stars as well as members of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Visitors to the house were handed LSD as soon as they entered the door, and bowls of cocaine sat around for anyone to partake. Phillips became good friends and drug buddies with Keith Richards, and the two attempted to make an album together in the late 1970s. They ended up wasting time during their recording sessions by shooting heroin instead of playing music, and the studio decided not to release the album until after Phillips's death. Mick Jagger was also a good friend and invited Phillips and his daughter Mackenzie over for tuna salad sandwiches, sent Phillips out for more mayo, and then locked him out so he and Mackenzie could have sex. Frank Sinatra called in his mob ties after John Phillips slept with Maya Farrow. Although Michelle Phillips had been cheating on her husband throughout their marriage, he had been cheating on her as well. One of John Phillips's affairs was with Maya Farrow. They happened to get together while her husband, Frank Sinatra, was away on tour. When Sinatra found out about it, he obviously wasn't happy and used his ties with Chicago Mafia boss Sam Giancana to send Phillips a warning. A couple of mob thugs allegedly paid Phillips a visit, but he wasn't intimidating. Phillips simply decided to protect himself by acquiring a small collection of weapons. Whether he ever slept with Farrow again is unclear. Roman Polanski threatened John Phillips with a knife. On the night the infamous Manson family murders took place, John Phillips had been invited to visit the home Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate were renting. Fortunately for him, he was unable to make it because he was too high and managed to escape being gruesomely murdered. Polanski didn't view this as being so fortunate, though, and at one point believed Phillips was behind the murders as an act of revenge after Polanski had an affair with Michelle. Polanski allegedly threatened Phillips with a kitchen knife, holding it to his throat. Phillips later appeared in court to testify in the Manson trial, as did Cass Elliot, since several of her ex-boyfriend drug dealers had supplied the Manson family with their products. Everyone was either sleeping with each other or suffering from unrequited love. When John Phillips first met Michelle, he was married and she was a teenage model. After they fell in love, Phillips divorced his wife, married Michelle, and made her part of his trio, the new Journeyman. As the Mamas and the Papas began their streak of success, Michelle discovered she and bandmate Denny Doherty had feelings for one another, and they started an affair. Although Phillips was engaged in his own affairs, he was enraged when he eventually found out. After she also had an affair with Gene Clark of the Buy-ins, Michelle was briefly kicked out of the band. Meanwhile, Cass Elliot had fallen in love with Doherty, but he wasn't interested, and his affair with Michelle hurt her deeply. Doherty recalls, "Cass wanted me, I wanted Michelle, John wanted Michelle, Michelle wanted me, she wanted her freedom." The tangled web of love, sex, and relationships that went on in the group made for a very messy situation, and eventually led to the band's demise. The band lived on a beach in the Virgin Islands with a quart of liquid LSD. The first time all four members of the Mamas and the Papas took acid, they decided to take a trip. According to the story, one of them closed their eyes, pointed to a map, and their finger landed on the Virgin Islands. Along with a group of about 15 people, including 5-year-old Mackenzie, they camped on the beach, drank rum from half coconuts, and lived off of soon-to-be maxed-out credit cards. Cass Elliot found a waitressing job near their camp in order to join them, and brought a quart of liquid LSD along as a gift. After about a month, the group decided to go to California, obtained a car, and made their way there. The song Creek Alley was written about this drug-filled beach vacation. John Phillips allegedly had a consensual sexual relationship with his daughter for 10 years. 8 years after her father died, Mackenzie Phillips published an autobiography that claimed the two had a sexual relationship. According to her story, Phillips visited her in 1979, the night before she was to be married to Jeff Cecily, part of the entourage of the Rolling Stones. She wrote, "I had tons of pills, and Dad had tons of everything too. Eventually, I passed out on Dad's bed. My father was not a man with boundaries. He was full of love, and he was sick with drugs. I woke up that night from a blackout to find myself having sex with my own father." Mackenzie said their sexual relationship later became consensual and continued for 10 years. Phillips's wives refused to believe the story, claiming he would never take such action with his own daughter and pointing out Mackenzie's history with drugs. On the other hand, Mackenzie's half-sister, Chynna, fully believed her and noted she was told the story back in the late 1990s.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.